I have been assured. Let's take a moment of silent prayer and pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay, we do have a quorum, even though it may not look that way. We have Supervisor Pridemore and Supervisor Conrath are zooming in, as well as Supervisor Krebs. So actually, we are all in attendance. They just didn't brave the weather today. But Supervisor Mary did. Thank you for showing up and keeping me company today. Okay, first thing is the minutes. Any questions or things that need to be missing items, anything? Hearing none, I will accept the minutes as being approved. We have these pass-through items, the LWRM contract and payment. I think we'll run those together. We'll take a motion on those.
So move.
Moved by Supervisor Mary.
Ladies, speak up.
Conrath, second.
And Conrath will second. Thank you very much. Okay, so these are pass-through checks. Jamie, anything we have to note or notice on any of these? No. Okay, so these are just pass-through payments. We've done these in the past. They're just us formality. All approved, saying aye. Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? It's unanimous. Thank you. Okay, we're going to do a little bit of a change. One of our guests, who is at the end, will be here all night for the USDA APHIS Wildlife Damage and Abatement Program claims. I don't need to know that I'll need to necessarily have you speak, sir. This is just for damaged crops, correct?
Yep, it is. Yep.
So this is just a reclamation. This is basically very similar to what we just passed. It's a pass-through item, just a check for damaged crops from wildlife damage. So take a motion. Supervisor Pridemore. Second. Supervisor Mary. All right, any questions? All right, all approving saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anybody opposed? Okay, hearing none, I will consider it passed. I will then duly sign the document for the payment and pass it off.
Thank you.
Moving on, Washington County Land Information Plan 2024 update. What we're going to do on this update is, I hope you read it. It's somewhat lengthy, and basically what it is what we've been doing as far as
use the right lane to take the Wisconsin 91 west. Right on.
Not me.
So what it basically is all the things that we've done in land survey markers and digitizing all of our information and all those types of things. This is required by the state, is to have a master plan, which we've done. It's here. It is submitted for your review, but it's not something that we necessarily need to vote on or approve. So it is a discussion item. Are there any questions on this item? Okay, so hearing none, I will just consider this item as being basically acknowledged. We've got it. Thank you very much for the information, and we're good.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I would like to express our thanks to Mr. Damcott and the other staff. It's a huge document, it's a huge undertaking, and I was involved with some of the discussions on it, and congratulations for getting it done. There's a lot of time spent just preparing it, and it's the sort of thing that is required on a regular basis, and it's one of those headache jobs nobody wants to do, but we got it done. And thanks to Eric. Thank you, sir.
Appreciate that. Thank you, Carol.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Mary. Appreciate that. Supervisor Mary, excuse me. Where's my formality? Okay, moving on. Item C, Land Water Conservation Plan 5-year update. We have Mr. Paul Backus here.
Thank you. I got a presentation prepared. I'm going to plug in my laptop here into the HDMI. I believe that'll make it that everyone can see my screen virtually, right?
And you're going to give us the high points.
I'll keep this moving then.
There you go. You get it.
All right. Should be. All right. It's here up on the screen. Assuming everyone can see it right now. I guess Dennis introduced me, but I'm Paul Backus. I'm the lead conservationist in the Natural Resources Department. I took over the county conservation role from Paul Siebel shortly after he retired. So today I'm going to go over our 5-year report that we need to submit to the Department of Ag as part of our Land and Water Resource Management Plan. So I won't read over everything that I put up on the screen. I know this presentation will get forwarded to you, and allow you to read over the details. But in general, the Land and Water Plan is something that the state requires us to do. Every 10 years, we need to update it, and in the middle of the 10 years is that we need to provide an update to the Land and Water Board at DATCAP, and we're scheduled to be doing that February 4th of this year. So, like I said, it maintains eligibility for many of the grants that pass through from the state and some of the ones you already approved. The plan process is that back in 2020, there was a committee formed. Bob Hartwig was the chairperson of the committee, and it was a combination of citizen members and couple other partner agencies. The goal of it was to have it align with our strategic priorities of the county and be citizen driven. And not everything in this plan is coming down from Madison. There is input from the county. Just kind of keep going through it here. The goals, you can read through them too, but these were meant and done. They're in our plan. They're in your presentation too. They're meant to align with the county's strategic priorities. So getting a little more into the meat and potatoes of all this, this was in the same spreadsheet here that was in your packet that reviewed all the practices that we've installed over the last 5 years, and dollar amounts, numbers, and all that. But just wanted to highlight a couple of them just to give you a little bit better understanding of what we do out in the countryside. This particular one that's in front of you right now, this was a large farm. I think it's a dairy farm on the northwest corner of the county. They were looking at expanding and investing into their operation, and as part of expanding, they were looking at manure storage. Is that after they have the animals, and where exactly they want to go with it so that they can store it and be able to apply it at the right time. So we worked with this farm to create, you can see that in the middle of the screen, with big 10-foot vertical walls. We helped them create a system for moving the manure from the barn into the storage, and from some of the open lots, we created a way for that water to go from the lots, be able to pump back over to the manure storage, and created a system for the large concrete slab you see more in the center bottom. That's where he stores all the feed for the farm. We collect the runoff from that and take that also back to the pit. So we take a farm where he had a pasture and open lots that were drained towards a ditch and containing that runoff and controlling it. Another practice that's a little bit less involved from the engineering standpoint is we work with a lot of landowners and talk to them about the benefits of converting farmland that is close to a stream or a lake and just converting that over to grass. So they can harvest it, they can utilize it But this is one of our, probably the biggest bang for our bucks, allowing us to kind of a grasp area to help filter out anything that comes from the farm field before getting in the waterway. This one was a little more of a unique of a project, is the town abandoned a road, and then and at that same time, there was a bunch of issues going on with that road where there's strange issues, and every time you get a big storm, the roadbed was washing out and dumping onto the neighboring properties. So we worked with the 3 landowners and the town, and we came up with converting this road into an old rock line channel that could safely pass this water without causing any issues for the downstream neighbors. This farm, as we worked with them, where they had an open lot that they had their animals on, and every time it rained, the manure from the lot would be able to run in the road ditch and eventually to a nearby waterway. So we helped work with them and helped build a roof up over the lot so that this way there's no runoff coming from the lot and everything's contained. The animals are drier, it's a little easier to manage the manure, and the animals are a little drier and happier. This is another one. This one was just completed this last year. This is our Polk Springs project, in which we took a section of stream. We were looking back at old air photos and saw that the stream used to run kind of diagonal across the field, and then sometime in the 1930s it was straightened to go along the property line. So we worked with the landowner and shifted the stream back over to where it historically was located, and this happened in conjunction with the County Highway P reconstruction, in which they needed to move the stream anyways, so it turned out to be a bit of a win-win for the county, in which we're able to utilize some of the grant dollars we have for clean water to get that stream further away from the road, not have it anywhere close that somebody could drive off the road and drive into the stream. Includes safety, water quality. It tended to be a win-win all around. And you can see from the pictures, especially on the left side, it was a vertical eroded bank. There's quite a bit of sediment going into the stream. Even on the bottom there, you can see where the guardrail was starting to be eroding back towards the stream. So this is one of our more common practices. It's a grass waterway. Farmers work with us. They have erosion coming through the crop fields to convert it from eroded section of ground. It's losing all the topsoil and putting it back into grass. So as you can see in the bottom of the screen, and the before and afters, that in this particular site, any of the erosion that was going to the field would end up going directly into the stream. So well abandonment, when we work with getting on the farmsteads, is one of the questions we ask is, do you have any old wells? As you can see with the one we have up on the screen, is that a lot of these are just hand dug. There's quite a few of these still left out there, and it's a good question to ask. I always find them fascinating too, because they're over 100 years old and somebody hand dug these and lined them with field stone. So as you can see, a hole in the ground like this where it's a safety issue, and then anything that could get pushed into there can contaminate groundwater. So we look at trying to fill those things in. Just cover a little bit, like this is the practice side, but a lot of the work we do is just trying to educate the public. I won't get into everything I got on the screen, but in general, we have a policy that's we want to educate, not regulate, in which we try to make a more informed citizens, hopefully make better decisions for the natural resources in the county. So highlight a couple of them I think are a little more unique to the county, is that in the last, say, about 5 years or so, we've seen an uptick in complaints we've gotten tied to small farms that maybe have a couple animals, a couple horses, in which one other neighbor is concerned with where they're putting the manure or managing the pastures for these animals. So kind of that same theme of education, not regulation, is we put together a horse management workshop in which we reached out to the horse owners across the county and try and give them better tips and advice on how to better manage the manure from their animals in the pastures, and trying to be better neighbors and understand the impacts that they may have. At the county, we regulate, have an erosion control and stormwater management ordinance, and we kind of regulate the development portion of that. And we've had that ordinance in place for about 25 years now. So over that 25 years, there's been a lot of stormwater practices installed. Like see the stormwater ponds, you usually see in those little wet basins at the bottom of development. So we periodically go back and look at these to make sure that they function correctly. And we were starting to see like a common theme of some maintenance issues that were coming up. And most of this was tied to trees. As you can see in the photo there, that's probably a classic example of some of the stuff that we see, is where that's an outlet structure, the metal thing you see in the center of that picture, that allows the water to come up from the stormwater pond. Well, there's a little tree kind of growing up through there right now. So as it's something like that right now, it's a pretty simple and quick fix. But if you let that tree continue to grow, eventually it's going to ruin the outlet structure and cause a much more expensive issue compared to where about 5 or 10 minutes of somebody with a saw to clean it all out of there. So we put together an educational session where we invited kind of everyone that had ownership stake in a stormwater basin across the county. And we got a really good attendance. 64 of subdivisions and developments were accounted for. And a lot of them end up following up and getting an idea of what exactly they can do to stay ahead of maintenance on these properties, trying to avoid the costly stuff that they may run into. Another one I wanted to touch on too is this is our AAS coordinator holds these on the lake educational series where you can take a kayak or a canoe and paddle around the lake with her, and then she'll go over the basics of lake ecology and biology and give everyone kind of a quick rundown of that and other issues that are questions that landowners may have around their lake. Ooh, sorry about that. Should have put it on silent. For education too, is one of our primary groups with the farm community that we partner with is the Cedar Creek Farmers. I know for the people that are on virtually, you'll get this email to you later, and I did provide this to Carolyn Dennis. A little bit of a background on what exactly the group has accomplished in the last year and a pamphlet of kind of background on the group. But this is a picture they took, they presented to the county board about a year ago. And they're our primary partner of trying to educate the other farm community on clean water practices and kind of the no-till, the cover crops, the soil health, the stuff that we're focusing on here at the county. It's one thing for me to go out with not much of a farm background trying to tell a farmer to do this, but it's way more impactful for when their peers are trying to teach them about these things. So, next 5 years, just highlight a couple things that are on the horizon for us. First one is the Milwaukee River Regional Conservation Partnership Program. This is a partnership between four land conservation offices in the area: Fond du Lac, Sheboygan, Ozaukee, and in Washington County, MMSD, CLCF, and Conservation Fund, and I think the city of Cedarburg and Grafton too are all part of this partnership. We recently got a $19.2 million grant. Some of it's for land acquisition and for preserving cropland, and other focus of it too is clean water, and we had a goal for it of reducing 60,000 pounds per year of phosphorus going into the Milwaukee River watershed. This is a continuation of an existing grant we got for $7.5 million that preserved 1,500 acres and reduced 17,000 pounds of phosphorus per year. And large-scale trim grant is kind of go along with our Horse Workshop Owners Educational Series, is that we're looking at kind of working a little bit more hands-on with a group of small farms in the Jackson Cedar Creek area to come up with some practices to help them better manage their manure. Our water health education project we do quite a bit of education right now, but we're looking at even ramping that up even further, trying to get out and have a little more events, more presentations, more of a social media reach. And the final one is, this is something that's been taking you guys recently too, is the Conservation and Heritage Grant Program, in which we're looking at utilizing the A1 conversion fees to fund a preservation of open space program. So kind of zip through that pretty quick, and I'm happy to take any questions you may have about the presentation or the report I put in the packet. But if any questions after that, if I would like to entertain a motion to approve the 5-year report to DATCAP.
Okay.
Conrad, motion to approve?
Let's, before I take the motions, let's go ahead and check for any more discussion on the item, and we'll motion at the end. Is that fair enough? Any more discussions or comments out of the committee?
I'd just like to make a comment to Paul and the team. too often we think about your department as being farm-oriented, agricultural-oriented, and so on. I think a good example of the outreach on this is your stormwater practice. You say you had 154 people representing 64 subdivisions. That's not farm. Those are just general homeowners and subdivision management teams. And I commend you for having that kind of outreach beyond the agricultural community.
Yeah, I know we tend to focus a lot on agriculture, but there is other programs that we do implement
Yes.
too, like the non-metallic mining ordinance gets implemented through our office too. So it's we deal with developers, agriculture, so we cover a swath of the county. Thank you, Carol.
Thank you very much. Good report.
Thank you. Any Zoom people care to ask any questions of Mr. Backus?
No questions, but again, too, thank you. As Supervisor Mary put out, it's beyond, basic agriculture and farm fields like we think of, like you working with our, the AIS coordinator and CLCF. So it's a larger scope. So thank you so much for all your efforts.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I too would like to chime in to just really thank you for your work that you're doing. I believe that whole education and working with people, that's the government's job. The heavy hand of government, I believe, is mostly unnecessary. Because I believe the public will respond when you can show them the better way and show them how it affects our environment, what their actions do, and how by changing small things, which really don't seem like they necessarily cost a lot, it's just a matter of how you do things can make a big difference. So I really applaud that. So. Okay, so Ms. Conrath, would you care to resubmit your motion?
Sure.
All right. We have a first. Mr. Mary will second. And all approved, say aye. Aye. And anybody opposed, nay? And the ayes have it. Thank you very much, Mr. Backus. Appreciate your hard work.
All right. Thank you.
Moving on to sponsorship and naming rights policy at Fair Park. Jamie, you're taking this, correct?
Yes. Thank you very much. Those of you listening, my name is Jamie Ludovic. I'm the Chief Community Development Officer. Our Chief Executive Officer of the Agricultural Industrial Society, Stacy Holland, is also in attendance tonight. This item we are bringing forward because we hope to embark on a joint venture to tackle some of the conversations that we feel are needed out at Fair Park facilities with regards to the signage and the names on a bunch of the facilities. So what you actually have in your packet is a policy that we have in Washington County related to naming rights. And we are suggesting a few modifications to the parameters of the policy, with the biggest change adding Fair Park and facilities to it, and kind of the concept that we would be then, interested in kind of the parameters of your comfort level with these conversations. And then the full list is kind of listed in here for you as well. So following a decision on the policy, we would embark on a number of conversations around category 2 and 3 naming right facilities with a goal of having a mutual understanding and an agreement with everybody who has a name on one of our facilities. And then I know I'm throwing a lot at you, but I just want to cover it. We are also taking the opportunity to update the list of available naming opportunities in the parks. So this was created in 2017, and we do have a couple that were sort of developed after the original policy approval. Homestead Howells presented by J.W. Speaker, and we have one, a Sandy Paws Fleet Farm Dog Park, which is actually expiring. So those all have and had agreements and extensions. which were negotiated by staff following the adoption of the original policy. We do have some conversations right now about attempting to solicit names out at Heritage Trails, and so we want to make sure we are posting the opportunities and following the process we put together so that we're in a position to have those conversations. So again, using that as an example, should we be in a position to be changing the name of Heritage Trails, that would trigger this committee's approval because it's in a park in its entirety. Right, so that's one of those parameters in the policy compared to if we were to say just name a trail or put a spot, youth skills area sponsored by fill in the blank or presented by fill in the blank. So that's really just a very quick overview of what's in your packet. I know there's a lot here, but we are looking to get this policy updated so we can start this work. So I'd be happy, or Stacy is here as well, and she'd be happy as well to answer any questions you have on this item.
Okay, so I trust the committee has had the opportunity to take a look at all this. So I'd ask right now, any questions that you may have, bring them forward. Okay, here,
Yeah, I was just going to make a comment. I appreciate the concept behind it.
Thank you. Is Mr. Krebs trying to chime in?
Is he asking a question?
I'm not sure. Mr. Krebs, are you trying to chime in?
If it's appropriate, yes.
Yeah, okay. Yes, go ahead, sir.
Question, in case I'm sorry if I missed it in the packet, but naming rights, like moving forward, is there going to be like a term limit to them, or like how often would they be before they would have to be like renewed or readdressed? Because like some of the existing naming rights I saw for like out at Fair Park, there's like no documentation related to it. So I'm wondering, are those kind of in perpetuity, or is there, how often are we trying to readdress those or make sure that they're still wanted or needed?
Yeah. So the goal is that we have a contract and a date, for lack of a better way to say it, for every name on our facility. The answer to your question, though, is there's no one size fits all. So there may be a discussion where the agreement is, yes, this is kind of one that annually renews for a long period of time. But right now we don't have any definitions around a lot of this at the point where we have 25-year-old facilities and a large facilities investment project going into the facilities. There are a handful of these that really also need paint, need facelifts. And so, so each category 2 item on this list, I mean, the idea here is to talk to you first, and then go one by one down this list, try to make contact and try to come up with a mutual agreement with the business or the family on what's inappropriate. They would have an agreement with the county who owns the facilities for names. And then we would, we're going to divvy these up, and I would encourage anyone who may have a personal connection to any business on this list. I use the example, if there's an existing relationship, we're going to try to leverage that and make sure we have good conversations, but there's no one size. These are all going to be 5-year agreements. They're all going to be 10-year. Some of them might be 25 years. Some of them might be another 15 years. We really haven't gotten to that parameter discussion. If you have an opinion on that, I think we'd love to hear any comments you have related to any of that in terms of what you think is appropriate.
Okay. Yeah, currently I don't have too much of an opinion other than I would like to hopefully see sunsets on everything. Like, not that there's something like a forever one out there. I think everything should have some time to readdress it or reconfirm it and stuff. Yeah, so that's all I have for that.
Okay, thank you, Supervisor Krebs. Anybody else?
Yeah, Supervisor Conyer, just on that note, James, you spoke of not a one size fits all for the naming rights, but maybe some standardization, say for the trails or, or for the buildings at Fair Park or, some type of, foundational standardization for the same type of, categories.
Yes, yes. And on that note, I do think we are also aware that there are reasons why sometimes the value of a naming rights agreement is one thing, and then they also sometimes make donations, right? So donations are not the same as naming, and so that can come into the conversation. And that's a really good point in terms of, what the value of those things might be for somebody who maybe never responds to us, right? If we make 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 attempts and people no longer exist, right? We can't find anybody to contact, what is the value that we would be looking at from, these companies for whatever it is they're doing. It's easier with new. I remember the other thing I want to say. I do want to point out to the committee that behind this or with it, there is a desire by the AIS Board of Directors, and I think Washington County as well, I've heard it, to rename the entire facility out there. So right now it is Fair Park and Conference Center. And I think there's been some conversation about that related to what it really is and the expo and the equestrian complex. I know the Fair Park will come up at your strategic priorities retreat. Prior to renaming it, so Pleasant Valley Expo or whatever we might come up with, there are a handful of those conversations with the existing facility companies that have naming rights, as well as the idea of should you try to sell the name of the entire complex before you would just name it and go through the effort of rebranding and new signage and all of that. So I do think I just want to posture everybody that is on the heels of this conversation of, is there any interest in that at large from anybody currently out there, or a broader context to help fund some of the facility needs that we still have ongoing out there.
Supervisor Mary?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's the ideal time for us to undertake this. Last summer we had our 25th anniversary event. The county is ready to spend some very serious funding into updating the AV of somewhat of a facelift on a great deal of the conference or exposition activities out there. So I think in that regard, we've got the perfect handle to go in and say, hey, we're working at basically kind of a facelift, complete update for Fair Park. Like you could go into a home and after 25 years, you're going to totally redo the kitchen and the living room. It's the same sort of thing. So this can be our launch pad to go back to all these people and say, hey, do you want to continue? We're trying to develop a more stable program or a long-term program where you can continue for 3 years, 5 years, 1 year, whatever. Again, some parameters will have to be drawn up. But I think this is the ideal time to do it. And as we mentioned at the county board meeting, just I think a week or so back, unfortunately, Stacy Holland has run into some real landmines out here at Fair Park, and this is one of them. I can imagine 25 years ago when they were doing the fundraising to raise the money to build the park, said, hey, you'll give us $10,000, we'll put your name on a building, and it was a one-time shot. Nobody ever thought about continuing it down the road. And now the time has come to do that. And I applaud Stacy with the work she's done, and I'm sure she had some anguish when we realized that we don't have paperwork on a great many of these commitments. And so, it's time to do it. I think the committee should move forward and encourage Jamie and Stacy and whoever else is going to be involved to get on it and get it done. And by the time the whole outfit, the whole facelifting, whatever you want to call it, at Fair Park is done in 2026, we could really have a grand reopening, so to speak. Upgraded signage, perhaps some new sponsors, and we'll even have a PA system where we can announce to everybody what's happened. So, thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Mary. Any other questions on the Zoom? Supervisor Pridemore?
I have just one question. I was just wondering, what is the cost of rebranding, renaming, like the Fair Park, just in general? Curious what that
We
cost
will,
would be.
we will have an answer to that before we bring that forward in terms of a recommendation.
Okay.
That's a good question, and I think we need to probably think through what that means.
Okay, anyone else? Okay, because I'm going to take the last word on this one. All right. So I'm a huge free market capitalist, and I believe that the opportunities are there, and considering that we've moved the parks off of the tax levy and told them, let's survive on our own, as well as we've told AIS that they need to improve, and they're certainly working to that end. I think we should always give them every opportunity to make that happen, and I think this is a great opportunity for both parties. I think the whole policy seems very reasonable, that if there's major buildings and stuff like that, will come back to the county. There will be an agreement where the county will have at least some word in that. But it does give a certain amount of flexibility to AIS on their own as well to look at things, and also certainly gives our Parks Department good latitude to start working out some of the things too. I know there is interest in naming rights with our parks. Certainly there's opportunity there, and would definitely like to see that happen. I think it's good for the advertising community, and I think it's good for the people of Washington County. So, having said all that, I will entertain a motion to approve. Motion by Supervisor Mary. A second?
Supervisor Conrad?
Seconded by Supervisor Conrath. All approving, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you very much. Okay, moving on, we have the Parks and Trails 2050 plan. Jamie, I take it you're taking this?
Yes, I am. Thank you very much. So by point of background, just for the committee's sake, for anybody who doesn't, the approval process can be kind of tough. So the way that the county works and the way these 2050 plan updates work is we are bringing you this 2050 plan update now. You'll see the Golf Course 2050 plan in January. Because we are taking a step back at the long-term view of these enterprise funds who don't use any tax dollars to fund their projects and their equipment. So we want to make sure the funds stay healthy, that the projects are affordable, and that we're looking at kind of a long-term vision of what we're spending and what we're doing. The plan then will inform the county's capital improvement plan, which comes to the county board committee in February for the next 5 years, and is a plan that is approved by the county board. That plan then takes the next 2 years into the biennial operating budget where you approve the expenditures for those 2 years. Okay? So the focus of the detail is really being provided in 2026 and 2027, which are the next 2 years of the biennial budget, because those will be the next 2 years that you authorize the funding of those projects. So in your packet, you have the 2050 plan, which if you look at the spreadsheet, which I understand this spreadsheet can be a lot, but there is a line in 2025 that says capital non-vehicle 177,256. That line plus the vehicle purchase of 118,303, those two numbers combined are then what you see in the detailed spreadsheet. So they tie out. So in 2026, you see 1.57 million in expenses. If you then go to the 2026 detail, you see that it equals that because that's where the lakefront development expense is showing up of 1.1 million, right? So those numbers tie out in terms of what you're looking at in these plans. So we have included the detail in 26 and 27. The big changes in this plan from the last update are we did not include vehicles and equipment in the original 2050 plan, but we have since made the decision that we want the Parks Enterprise to fund these and pay for these. So what happens now is the fund itself will need to buy all of the trucks, mowers, tractors, and then a portion of that rate is charged back to the county tax levy for snow operations on the county grounds. So, but the fund, the Parks Enterprise, pays for it on the front end. So I know that's a lot to throw at you. So I'll just add one more thing. We've also shown you here 2025 project changes. So again, the two big ones, adding vehicles and equipment, and then Heritage Trails money for Slinger Fire Department. Those projects have not shown up before, but the totals are under the authorized spending authority for this fund because, and I make this note down there, we are bumping some asphalt projects at Sandy Knoll out several more years. So that's really how that's the change that's happening. So I will attempt to answer any questions I can. Logan is the detail behind this, and he is actually not here tonight. So depending on the question, our Chief Public Safety Officer is here as well because he's been working closely with Slinger Fire Department on that project, and in case you have any questions about that project. So we're happy to answer any questions.
Great, thank you. So I guess I'll defer out to any questions by the committee. All right.
I have a question if I could.
Supervisor Krebs.
Thank you. So on the top of the spreadsheet where in yellow it shows the equipment and vehicles, is that more of a ledger transfer? Are we buying our existing equipment that we're already using? Or is that new equipment and vehicles that we'll be purchasing?
Correct. It is new vehicles and equipment that we will be purchasing to replace existing fleet.
Okay, so like moving forward, is this like kind of a transitional process or budget where as we replace equipment, that's where the enterprise fund will be picking up those new expenses?
Yes, exactly. So the enterprise inherited all of the assets. So in theory, they are in the fund. And so now they are responsible for the full replacement cost of those vehicles and equipment. And so it shows up, and you see in the 2050 plan spreadsheet, there's actually, it's in gray, but it says vehicle lease and vehicle purchase. We evaluated, we spent a good amount of time evaluating lease versus buy and the sustainability of the plan and the impact on the equipment. But you see it kind of showing up every year now, the 10-year replacement of these trucks and equipment into this fund. So that ultimately does take away from other park projects or other available balances. But it is, you can see the top cash balance estimates, which we are comfortable with.
Okay, and maybe I missed it in the spreadsheet, but are we showing, or in the income area, are we showing like the billables that we will be billing the county back for the snow operations then?
We do in our operating budget.
Say that again, I'm sorry, it broke up.
We show that in our operating budget.
Okay.
And then our operating budget shows an add to cash, or essentially, I don't want to use the word profit, but this year there's a number in our operating budget that falls back to help fund this 2050 plan. So we do collect, and then we kind of show what we're aiming for to support this plan, and it shows up in the kind of the added revenue line items. It is confusing. It is very technical.
The other question I had is the Slinger Fire Department equipment, is that specifically like kind of the UTV that we keep hearing about, that's kind of a needed piece out there, a unique piece of equipment needed out there, or is there more than that is kind of being included into that number?
Supervisor Krebs, Chief Public Safety Officer Dave Sager, and thank you, Mr. Chair, other distinguished members of the committee. I appreciate first and foremost the hard work and effort that Jamie Ludovic has put forward in this regard, along with the Heritage Bike Trails and the approval of the additional trails, and Slinger Fire Department providing those services and in partnership with Washington County to provide EMS and fire protection out there. This is the UTV that you're referencing, Supervisor Krebs. It's an essential piece of equipment that is necessary to provide that type of response to the Heritage Bike Trails in an efficient and safe manner for those that enjoy those amenities, as well as the personnel that are responding to that circumstance. They already do have a UTV, but that UTV is used currently because they have nothing else. But it's not specific to the need that's at the Heritage Bike Trail. The one that they currently have carries 200 gallons of water, and every time they respond to the Heritage Bike Trail, they have to dump that water because it's so top heavy. So this piece of equipment is absolutely specific to the Heritage Bike Trail. So this indeed is the exact piece of equipment that is itemized in Ms. Ludovic's report.
Okay, thank you.
Supervisor Mary?
Clarification, you're saying it used exclusively for the bike trails. It's used exclusively for rescue and assistance operation, similar to what might be used, not just if somebody else had a situation, they're saying, well, you can't take that, that belongs to the bike trails.
No, sir. That would be used for all parks.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
I want to make sure we understand exactly what
That's
you're
an
saying.
excellent point, and I appreciate that. That is the understanding that I have had with Slinger Fire, that would be incorporated into the fleet of equipment that's generally used and comprehensive in MABUS, more commonly referred to as mutual aid box alarm system. So that would be infused into the fleet. If that piece of equipment is needed anywhere in the county, they would go with it.
It just happens to be the Heritage Hills as a trigger to get the equipment.
That is the trigger, yes.
Thank you.
Yes, sir, thank you.
Okay, well then I guess this question's for you, Mr. Seeger. Do we have any kind of plan for that equipment as far as the maintenance and possible replacement down the road, or?
That'll all be within the contract itself.
Okay, and is that anywhere done yet, or are we working on that still?
We'll be working on it if we get approval from the committee.
But to clarify, we won't own this equipment.
Right.
Slinger Fire Department will own it, they will maintain it, and they will take on the maintenance and future replacement responsibility. That will be part of what we require, because we are not in the business of continually reinvesting. This, in the parks, we feel it's unique because we kind of brought on, if you think of an impact fee, I know it's not quite the same, but we've brought on a certain level of activity, and so we really want to support the acquisition of this equipment, but we will be hoping that it can be planned for long-term by Slinger Fire Department.
And I guess that's where I'm leading, and I appreciate your statement, because, we certainly realize we have a unique situation with this park, and we certainly realize that we want to move forward and be very cooperative with the Slinger Fire Department, because safety is a huge issue for us. But also we have to be mindful of how the equipment is used, just like anything else that we have, and how it's going to be maintained and how it's going to be replaced, and whose liability is what. We cross our T's, we dot our I's. So I think that's all very reasonable, and I appreciate your answers. Any other questions? Okay, hearing none, we will take a motion to approve. Motion by Supervisor Mary. I'll go ahead and second myself. All approved, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right. It's unanimous. All right. And our last item, we come to strategic priorities. Jamie, you're on this?
Yes, so the county board is set to talk about strategic priorities again in January. Part of that reason is you see a lot of yellow on this report of pieces of these that have been completed of the current strategic priorities. So this month, all of the strategic priorities are going to the respective committees, and these are the county board strategic priorities in front of you. And then in January, a report with all of them will roll up to the county board for you so that you can see what the progress is, what the status is on each one of these. I encourage everybody to read through them and think about maybe what the next phase is or what things they think are important or not important. And I'm really happy to answer any questions that I can on this report, knowing that there are a few of these topics that have been rolling to the executive committee, the economic development, housing, next gen housing stuff. But because they're under the economic growth and vitality pillar, which is land use and planning, that's why they're on this report as it relates to the county board strategic priorities. So they are in front of you, and I'm happy to answer questions on any of these that I can, or at least note the questions, or you guys can reflect on these and follow up as well if there's anything specific that comes to mind.
All right, do we have any questions from the committee? Supervisor Mary?
I see them as a work in progress.
Very good. I guess I would probably suggest to the committee that you might want to take a look and read through these all, make sure you got them. When we get to that next strategic planning meeting, we can use this as a basis for ideas that we can bring to the table. These things, it's difficult to come up with those first couple of items. But once the flow starts, it starts to flow and people start to get it and they start, thinking in that way and utilize this paperwork to kind of give you an idea of some things to kind of set your mind into that mode of what kind of priorities do we have for our county going forward. Ms. Pridemore, this is your first priorities meeting. So this might be a new thing for you, but these are some of the things that we did a couple years back and now have accomplished. So things that in our community that we need to focus on, whether that be, childcare, jobs, manufacturing, it could be dozens of different items, and literally nothing's off the table. Bring every and any idea, because we workshop it. We start dissecting it and cutting it up, and then we come up with the top ones. So it's a real good opportunity to learn a little bit about your community and start to shape the things. I mean, obviously, Supervisor Pridemore, you came here with an idea of what you'd like to do. And so this is your opportunity to put forward something that you think is not addressed or could be addressed or to start thinking about in our community. So with that, we don't need any motion on this, as this is just a working document. And there's no more questions, so I will go ahead and consider this meeting as closed. Next meeting date, oh, wait a minute. Jamie, you had a question?
Well, I just want to acknowledge you did skip item A, but it is an FYI item, so I do not know that you need to discuss it. I just wanted to point out that the Farm Bureau annual policy were included on the agenda for your information.
Yeah, I did. My mistake on that. Yeah, let me get back to that. We had to jog. Excuse me. We had to jog some stuff around. I missed that. Everybody should have read through that. Are there any questions on what the Farm Bureau stuff is? I mean, it's basically just a document telling us their plans and their wishes, which I read through. Everything seems to be in order. So, okay, hearing none, we'll consider that passed through and understood. And with that, then we will go ahead and close out the meeting, subject to the call of the chair. Next meeting will be January 16th of 2025. See you. Have a happy new year.